Hey, what's up, everyone? Dragging back again, here to tell you that you should be reading Xenozoic Tales. So, Xenozoic Tales is a 1986 novel written and illustrated by Mark Schultz, and basically takes place in a post-cataclysmic world. I don't want to say post-apocalyptic, as cataclysmic really is a better description of it. Where after, for like 600 years, human beings kind of living underground and hiding have returned to the surface, only to find that it has been reclaimed by kind of prehistoric Earth. So there's dinosaurs and creatures from the Permian era, creatures from the other prehistoric mammals roaming around, and they have kind of dubbed this new era the Xenozoic era. Now, in addition to just having these animals now being back, the environment itself has kind of change to kind of fit more what the world was before. So in other words, it almost appears that these different time periods, if you will, these different epochs have kind of all slammed in together, and now the world as we knew it is kind of a weird chimera of all these different time periods. So, for instance, much of the story takes place in what would pretty much be kind of like New Jersey-esque area, except now New Jersey is a tropical rainforest. New York City is this tropical island where you see the ruins of the old city in the sea. There's deserts where there was once forest. So it's geographically where everything was, but now what is there is changed. It really feels like not just the animals, the dinosaurs have returned, but the actual environments in which they inhabited have returned as well. And it basically follows the character Jack Tenrick, who is what they call like an old world mechanic, who basically they drive around these really souped up Cadillacs and these old vintage caddies from like the 50s and what have you that basically run off dinosaur guano. And basically they have this philosophy of, basically live and let live. I believe it is. I know in the animated series called the De Machina Vitae, which is basically like the machine of life, which basically talks about like we need to respect nature. We need to live and kind of tandem with nature, not against it. And the reason why this kind of philosophy is so important because there is another school of thought where humans who basically want to reclaim the world, who kind of are working to kind of excavate and discover old world technology so we can kind of use it to kind of slowly take back the world and in theory make it great again. Basically make it what it once was. And it is these two schools of thoughts that are kind of clashing because on the one side they're saying, look, this is what got us in this mess to begin with. The world is what it is today because of the arrogance of mankind before. The belief that the world was ours for the taking and that we could do whatever we wanted to it without any kind of repercussion. And we paid a price for that. Now we live in the shadows of giants. We live in the shadows of creatures that not only ruled this world long before mankind, but did so for much longer and did so without even destroying themselves. And these creatures are not going to, yield to human beings. So basically, we need to change to suit the world because the world is not going to change for us. And if we kind of walk down the same path as we did before with this arrogance, this notion that, the world belongs to us, well, the next time things go awry, we might not even be around. We got lucky this time. Yeah, we're living in the shadows of giants, but we're still living. Whereas next time around, maybe not. So it's kind of these two schools of thoughts that are battling out. And it's this really fleshed out world where you have people who poach dinosaurs, people who try to revert the dinosaurs, different kind of cities and culture who are trying to make contact to kind of unify humanity. Again, you have these different tribes who inhabit these different regions. And so it's really interesting kind of fleshed out world. And it's kind of an old kind of adventure story that, these are the kind of pulp comics that Mark Schultz grew up on, so he kind of created his own. So it's got a lot of adventure in it, a lot of action, a lot of thrills. One of the great ambassadors of the story's name is Hannah Dundee, and she's essentially from a completely different tribe who, like Jack Tenrick and the Old World Mechanics, are trying to, unify the world under a new banner of kind of like, working with the environment. Whereas like the City in the Sea, run by Sean horses, she's trying to basically just take back the world. She wants to rule this world, and she's very much that kind of mentality of the way things were before or the way things should be now. Things were great back then. We were awesome. Not really making the connection that, well, it is because of the way things were back then that things are the way they are now. There weren't dinosaurs back then. There weren't all these problems, this cataclysm that, nearly wiped out the human race happened because of the way we lived back then. So naturally, if you do it again, what's going to happen? And they're basically trying to say, listen, Even if we wanted to go live that way again, even if we somehow discovered enough old world technology where we could do that, should we? Because we already know how that's going to end. It might be great for a little bit, but ultimately it's going to come down on us. And again, the next time we might not be as lucky as we were this time in that we at least survived. The species at least made it through. It's no longer the dominant species on the planet. There's not as many of us anymore, but we're still here. But if we push our luck, if we tempt fate a second time, that may not be the case. So that's kind of the duality here. It's really a story again of not man versus nature. It's really man versus man, humanity against humanity. It's basically two sides of a coin. It's showing what humanity was and what humanity could be. It's basically humanity at a crossroads. And I kind of feel too like I don't know if this is Mark Schultz's intention, but when I kind of see the prehistoric elements of this world, I kind of feel like it's a symbol of like past versus potential future. It's showing what the direction we could go in backwards. And, a world with dinosaurs and whatnot is not a world where humans exist. So basically the world of dinosaurs that we're seeing it's kind of a wake-up call saying, hey, we weren't around back then because our species could have never evolved back then with these creatures around. Meaning, if we don't change, where the world is just going to continue to go back to the way it was, which means eventually there won't be any more human beings. Or do we move forward and try to forge this Xenozoic era where it's a world where humans now live in tandem with these other creatures that once were, and we create a new future. It's not a world of the past, it's a world of the future. And that's what they're fighting for, is to create a new future, a new world for humanity. Not for humanity to live as it did, but for humanity to live as it now should. So that's really kind of the dichotomy of the story. And it's, when you strip away all the more fantastical elements of like dinosaurs and, other forms of prehistoric life, which I know what you're thinking. Well, if you strip away all that, it's not really that interesting of a story, because quite frankly, that was my initial attraction to it. I love dinosaurs, and actually I was like, ooh, dinosaur story, sweet. But if you strip it if you have to, strip that part away and just look at just the human story, and you realize that it's a metaphor for our society today, what we've been grappling with, and perhaps, I'm not trying to get overly political on you guys here, but it's kind of it speaks very true to kind of our current political climate. There are some people who feel that the world is ours, that we have nothing to worry about, that we can just take and do as we please because we're the human race, we're top dog, and that's that. Hey, it's ours to do what we please. We want to destroy something, we want to dig something, we want to wreck something. Who cares? It belongs to us. Well, there's other people saying, no. We live here. We don't own it. If we don't respect that fact, it's gonna blow back on us. Because here's the thing: when you mess with the world changes. The world isn't necessarily being destroyed; it's just changing. So we'll look in history when things go extinct. It's because something in the world changes. The world is still there. Dinosaurs and a lot of the other creatures you're seeing in the story went extinct because the world changed. But the world was still there. When it changed, it became bad for one group and became advantageous for another. So it's not an issue of what will happen to the world. The world will still be here. The question is, will we? So in the context of this story, it's like if we mess with the world again, if we screw things up just as bad as we did before or worse, well, Earth will still be there. But will it now have changed to such a degree where we can't? Now, we're nowhere near what we were in this story. Now that dinosaurs are reigning supreme again. But we're still here. But we've seen how far down we got to knock down the food chain. So what happens if we take another hit? Will we even still be on the food chain anymore? That's kind of the issue. And it parallels, what happens in real life. Like when we affect the planet, when we change things, when we, do things that have adverse effects on our own environment, the environment will change and it will become now advantageous for certain organisms and become put others at a disadvantage. The question is, which category are we going to be in? So don't think of it as like tree huggers and things like, because that's what, when you look at the old world mechanics, when you see Jack Tenner talk, he's not talking about, hey, let's eat a granola bar, get out the acoustic guitar and, and just sing around a tree. He's been saying, listen, do it for the most selfish reasons of all. Yourselves, because again, this world will last. It will persist. We might not. So if you want to survive, we need to change. We can't do what we did before because we saw what happened when we did what we did before. The world as it is now is what happened, and we're barely hanging on. We need to accept that this is the reality now. Our ancestors made some mistakes, but we made it. We survived, and that's a testament to our species, our ability to survive. Now, from there, we need to learn how to do things right so we can continue to survive in the world as it exists today. And that's very much a metaphor for our world, because at the end of the day, regardless of what you believe in, regardless of what your politics are, we all share the same world, we all breathe the same air, we all have to live here. So if it becomes bad for one group of people, it becomes bad for all groups of people. And that's kind of what the crux of this story is about. It's basically saying, listen, take all the things you think make you so different and realize that in the face of kind of a global cataclysm, none of it matters, because what's going to kill one of us will kill all of us, and what will help one of us thrive will help all of us thrive. So whether you like it or not, we have to kind of develop a more live and let live, with nature mentality, because nature isn't going to bend to us. Nature is not going to yield to us. Nature is this unthinking, unfeeling thing. It is a process of life that will continue on with or without us. So Xenozoic Tales, that's what it's about. On the surface, it's a great kind of adventure story with dinosaurs and exciting characters and great villains. But beneath that, it's much more of a human story. And it's much more of a piece of kind of self-reflection on the human condition. I know I've talked and used that term several times on this show, but it's true. It's really more about us. On the surface, it looks like a cool dinosaur story, and it really is. I know there was talk some years ago. Apparently, my wife, who's in the channel, Ashley, has met Mark Schultz. And apparently he told the class when she was going to art school that, Spielberg, I guess, had bought out the rights to maybe turn it into a movie years ago, and then ended up making Jurassic Park anyway. But, so I've always said, it'd make a great, dinosaur movie. And on the surface, that's what it is. It's a great dinosaur story. But underneath that, it's really about humanity. It's really, the dinosaurs themselves are more of kind of this, larger than life visual metaphor for kind of the power of nature. Because when you think of nature and you think of the natural world, think of dinosaurs. Most of them anyway are big and strong and powerful and awe-inspiring, and they're much more impressive than us on the surface. And that's they're more like kind of envoys of the natural world in this story. We are in awe of them just as much as we fear them. So it's one of those things where you realize that nature will persist and nature will be stronger than us. So we now live in the shadows of these creatures, which is very much the reality of humanity today. In our world, we live in the shadow of nature. Whatever we do to nature, it will come back on us 100-fold. That is the reality. We wipe out a whole species, something else will evolve and take its place. The question is, will we survive? And that's what the story, it's a battle of survival, not against the elements, not against nature, not against the dinosaurs. It's, will we survive each other? Will we survive our own arrogance? Because that is the ultimate human extinction event. Humanity's arrogance, humanity's sense of that we are Lord of all that we survey. Because no, we're not. And this story shows that very viscerally. And, it's like they did actually a cool Saturday morning cartoon in the 90s. And they changed the name to Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. And then after that, they did a reprint run of the comics where they, under the new banner, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. And while the show didn't have as much of the graphic nature as the comics did for obvious reasons, it was actually a pretty adult cartoon, and it only lasted one season for that reason. But it's a great cartoon. I'll actually leave a link where maybe you can see. I'll see if I can find it on YouTube, and if I do, I'll put a link below. You can check it out. But again, it's the idea of like, hey, the world is what it is now because of what we did, and it's no longer bowing to us. So we all need to just kind of chill out, accept that the past is gone, even though it's kind of ironic because the past, is very much front and center in the story, and move forward and create the Xenozoic era. The Xenozoic era is a new era. It doesn't matter if it's got sprinklings of things from the past. Ultimately, this is a new time, and this is a new future. Let's do it right this time. And that's what this story is about. Humanity finally getting it right. So, Xenozoic Tales, have you read it? Have you read it under the banner Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, which for some people, that's kind of how they discovered it, initially, myself included, because when I was a little kid, I watched the cartoon, and then I saw the comic books, and then I later found out it was actually originally called Xenozoic Tales. But no matter how you discovered it, if you have read it or watched it, tell me what you think. Do you like the story? Do you think this is, long overdue for maybe like another animated series or, a movie perhaps? Because I really do think seeing a live-action movie of Xenozoic Tales would be very, very awesome. If you have not read it, I will leave some links in the description section below where you can pick it up. Do so, check it out. I mean, the artwork is really good. It's an old black and white comic, kind of in the indie days in the 80s. Now, obviously, because of the time period, the depiction of dinosaurs are not exactly scientifically accurate by today's standards. But when you get past that, it's a really, really cool story. A very imaginative story and a lot of fun to read. I think the characters are pretty cool too. So hopefully you'll kind of be sucked into the narrative like I was. But anyway, guys, leave some comments below. Let me know what you think, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace!